Hey Akaja, this is gonna be my holiday special this year. I think it's reasonably multi-purpose as a holiday video. I'd originally planned to make it in November in time for Thanksgiving for my American friends, but I got distracted by writing deadlines and my last minute decision to apply for a PhD, so that didn't happen. But this is a story about a bunch of people getting together for a feast and some fairly intense arguments breaking out, which, as I understand it, is not dissimilar to many people's festive experiences. Hence, holiday special. Yep, that's right, this is Scéla Mac Da Thó, a video I've been planning to make literally since I started doing this and just never got around to. Scéla Mucce, which is the tale of Mac Da Thó's pig, has the dubious honour of being the first medieval Irish text that I ever had to deal with in medieval Irish, because when I was an undergrad it was our first year set text for Irish. So I had this little blue book and we translated I think about the first half of it. We didn't finish the story in the course of the year, way back in the day when I was a baby fresher. So I will be using that translation for the first half of the story, and then since it doesn't cover the whole story I will be using a translation by Angela Grant that I found online. There's a link in the description. There is also a translation in Gant's Early Irish Myths and Sagas, which I have waved around at you a few times before. The other thing about Scéla Mucce is that usually I prefer to work with stories that I've worked on or researched recently, because then I know I'm up to date with the scholarship on them. And the last time I wrote an essay about Scéla Mucce was January 2015, which is kind of a while ago, so I brushed up on it a bit for this, but I probably don't have any super brand new academic insights for you today, which is fine because there is enough to be getting on with the story itself. So let's dive in. First of all, Scéla Mucce is an Ulster cycle tale, but it's a weird one because Cuchulainn isn't in it. It's not the only story he's not in, but it's kind of significant or noticeable that he's absent from this one. Some people use this as evidence that he was actually a late addition to the Ulster cycle and co-opted stories that were originally focused on other characters, and so this one therefore would predate his inclusion. And certainly this story is reasonably old. It's in Old Irish, even if the earliest manuscript it's in is the Book of Leinster, which is 12th century. Other people think that this story was intended as a parody of the time, and again, that could be a sign that Cuchulainn was a late addition to the tradition and that originally someone else was the main character. I'm not totally convinced by that. It's easiest to argue that this story just takes place before he was born, because he is just a tiny baby. He's a little lad. But it really doesn't matter. All you need to know is that he's not in it, and people like to argue about why. Instead, the focal characters of this story are Ciet Mac Magach and Conall Cernach. Fun fact, although they're positioned antagonistically here, and quite often, there are some stories where Ciet's position with regard to the Ullad is, like, not that clear cut. He's from Connacht, and as you know if you've been watching this channel for a while, Connacht and Ulster do not get along. But in one tale, the D.4.2 version of Compare Cuchulainn, he's actually Cuchulainn's foster father, and I am planning to write an article about that at some point, because I'm editing that story. But maybe I'll tell that one when I finished it. But that is a sidetrack. I have managed to start talking about Cuchulainn while talking about a text that is noticeably not about Cuchulainn, so let's put that aside. Okay, so Ulster cycle, Old Irish, Book of Leinster's the earliest manuscript. That's the important bits, right? Links to the translations in the description as always. Cool, let's go. This story starts, as so many stories do, with a king. A good king. He was king in Leinster, and Mac Da Thó was his name. Now, Mac Da Thó had a hound, and the hound's name was Alva. Alva was magnificent. He protected all of Leinster and all around Ireland. People had heard about how great he was. So much that Medivh and Ailill, the rulers of Connacht, sent messengers to Mac Da Thó to ask if they might possibly obtain the hound for themselves. But Conchobar, the king of Ulster, had the same idea, and also sent messages to Mac Da Thó seeking the same hound. Mac Da Thó made all of the messengers welcome and brought them into the hostel. Now, I know that for me, my mental image when you say the word hostel is a youth hostel, like budget accommodation and bunk beds. That is very much not the vibe here. This is a glorious guest house. This is one of the most glorious guest houses in Ireland. There are 5 of them, we're told, and the others are also wreathed in stories. There's Dathó's hostel, the fate of which was the very first story I retold here. There's Dathó's hostel, which also has a tale, although I've never read it. There is the hostel of Fogel Manach, and Fogel Manach is the father of Eva, Cuchulainn's wife. And then there's the hostel of Mac Da Thó, and I've got to say I don't know anything about that one. Sorry. So this hostel, it has 7 doors, and 7 paths through it, and 7 hearths, and 7 cauldrons. Each cauldron is full of food of ox and pork, and anyone who passes through stabs his fork into the cauldron, and whatever he manages to stab, that is his to eat. But if you fail to get anything the first time, well, no food for you. Mac Da Thó asks the messengers from Connacht what they want, and they explain that they have come for the hound, and in exchange Connacht will give 160 milk cows and the best chariot and horses in Connacht, and the same again in a year's time. The messengers from Ulster hasten to add that they'll give just as much from Ulster, and that Conchobar's a really good person to have on your side, actually, and look at all this cattle he might give you if you keep him friendly. Wink wink, nudge nudge. Mac Da Thó panics. He doesn't know what to do, because either way he stands to gain a lot but also some powerful enemies. For 3 days he tosses and turns, trying to make a decision, and eventually his wife is like, dude, what is wrong? He's like, everyone knows you can't tell secrets to women, and she's like, but 2 minds are better than 1, so come on, you're clearly having trouble here. So he explains the situation. If he doesn't give it to Conchobar, the Ullad will rampage across his territory until there's nothing left. But if he doesn't give it to Medivh and Allil, their champion, Ceart Mac Magach, will do the same thing, and either way he's screwed. His wife says, well, give it to both of them and let them fight over it, let them both die because of this. No reason it should be our problem. After all, no one even knows where that hound came from. And that's how we find out this is apparently a mystery dog sent by God, which is very impressive considering this is a pre-Christian setting for the story. God is truly outside of time. Mac Da Thó thinks this is a great plan, absolutely nothing that can go wrong here, so he goes to the messengers from Connacht and he's like, okay, good news, I'm giving the hound to Medivh and Allil, let them come here and get it and we'll have a big party. And then he goes to the messengers from Ulster and he's like, time to celebrate, I'm giving the hound to Conchobar, let him come here and get it and we'll party about it. Well, you can see where this is going. Obviously they both show up on the same day. Medivh and Allil with all their greatest champions and warriors. Conchobar with all of his mortal enemies facing each other at Mac Da Thó's hostel. Wow, this is like so unexpected, says Mac Da Thó, the guy who invited all of them. But anyway, come on in. So the Connachters stay on one side of the house, the Ullad on the other. It's a big place, but the tension is palpable. These guys do not like each other. They've been fighting, we're told, since 300 years before the birth of Christ. Yikes. That is a long time to hold a grudge. To prepare a feast for all of them, Mac Da Thó has his most magnificent pig killed. Yes, the pig from the title of the story. It is so huge it has taken 60 cows to feed it for 7 years. When it lies flat, 50 oxen can be served on top of it. But, and here's the thing, Mac Da Thó has been feeding it poison for years so that he can kill both the Connachter and the Ullad with it. Plot twist. Quick side note to say that I love that the pig is just huge and this actually doesn't come up again in the story. It's something that Irish and Welsh lit have in common, the way they like to go, what if animal, but big? Anyway, Mac Da Thó serves up the pig and he's like, I know this isn't adequate for you guys, you're all worthy of much more food than this, but don't worry, if you're still hungry at the end, we'll serve you more. This is a good pig, says Conchobar. Sure is, says Allil, so how are we going to divide it up? Oh, I know, says Brickrew, whose entire thing is causing trouble for everyone at all times. Obviously, in a room full of warriors, the only way to do this is to have a contest to see who is truly the champion of champions, worthy of the biggest portion. He adds, somewhat maliciously, after all, you've all fought each other before, so you should know who's the best. Did I mention that Brickrew likes to stir up trouble? Allil and Conchobar are both enthusiastic about this idea, and both confident that they have someone in their group who will win the contest. And what follows is, well, it's a pissing contest, it's an exchange of insults, it's, well, I should win because I kicked your face in at XYZ Ford, and the insulted person saying, okay, but what about the time I stabbed you at ABC River? Endlessly. This goes on for a little while until one man emerges victorious, i.e. he claims to have beaten most of them up and no one can dispute that, and that man is Ceart Mac Magach. What to say about Ceart? He might be related to Allil. He might be related to Conall Cernach. He's probably not related to both of them, but that's a whole thing. Depends which version of the genealogies you follow. He may or may not be Cuchulain's foster father, as I already mentioned, but the one that matters to us here is he might be related to Conall Cernach. Specifically, he might be his maternal uncle. I just want you to bear that in mind with everything that goes down after this. So Ceart sits down in front of the pig, ready to carve himself the champion's portion, but before he does that he looks up and says, go on then, do you have even one person who can challenge me on this? Silence. Now the Ullad are not happy about this because they don't like the idea of the champion's portion going to someone from Connacht, because that is as good as admitting that the Connachter are superior in general, and they are very much not about that life. Conchobar turns to Loigerer and is like, are you seeing this? And Loigara is seeing this, and he doesn't like it. "This is not right," he says. "Oh really?" says Kit. "Remember when you were a little baby warrior and you first took up arms and tried to raid Connachta and I kebabbed you with a spear and you ended up running off leaving your chariot and all your weapons behind? 'Cause I remember that. Yeah, you can't beat me, kid." Next to protest is Angus Mac Gyfyd, a name which basically means son of the taken hand or son of the no-handed one. "Funny story," says Kit. "You know how your dad got that name?" "Yes, because I cut his hand off." "Sit down, kid." And then comes Owen Mac Da Thó, a guy you may remember from Longest Macnishlan. "I recognise you," says Kit. "Didn't I nick a bunch of cows from you one time? And you threw a spear at me, so I yeeted it straight back and took your eye out, and that's why you've only got one eye now. Lol." Next, Munrava Mac Gergan, who is apparently a glutton for punishment because he's barely stood up before Ket is pointing out that 3 days ago he killed several men, among whom was Munrava's firstborn son. Next, Mend Mac Solchadar, whose father lost his foot to Ket's sword. Next, Kelkak Mac Uthaka, whom Ket once stabbed in the testicles, so now he can't have children. Next, Cuskred Mend Macha, son of Conchovar, who has a permanent neck injury after a spear wound from Ket, and stutters as a result of it. And in this way, all of the Ullad were shamed by Ket, and nobody could challenge him for the champion's portion, because at some point in the past he'd beaten them and maimed them and injured their families. But Gotobban. Suddenly, slam, the door opens. Conall Cernach comes in. Now I am very much imagining this as like Aragorn slamming the doors open. That's not what the text says, that's just what I'm picturing at all times, really. Whether or not I have a reason to. All of the Ullad are on their feet cheering because they know that this changes things. Conall is here to save them from disgrace. "Oh, you're just in time for dinner," says Conchovar. And Ket looks at the pig and is like, "Yeah, I'll have some of that. Who's carving?" As one, everybody points to Ket. Conall looks at Ket. Ket looks at Conall. "Welcome, Conall," says Ket. "Heart of stone, angry heat of a lynx, brightness of ice, strength of red anger, with the breast of a hero, full of scars, battle victorious." And Conall says, "Welcome, Ket. Ket Macmagach, dwelling of a hero, heart of ice, plumage of a swan, a noble charioteer, strong of combat, raging storm, beautiful fierce bull." Because that is what two guys do who hate each other. They spend several minutes talking about how great the other one is through the medium of poetic metaphor. "Now this is going to be an epic battle," says Conall. "People will be talking about this one for ages. Now step away from my pig." "Your pig?" says Ket. "What makes you think this is your pig? How about the fact that ever since the day I took up arms, I haven't gone a single day without killing one of the Connachta, and I sleep every night with the head of my enemies under my knee." Ket thinks about this for a minute, and then he's like, yeah, that's valid. "I grudgingly concede that you are a better warrior than me. But if my brother Anluan was here, he would be able to beat you for sure. This would be a completely different outcome." "Oh, would it?" says Conall. "Well, good news. Anluan is here." And he whips out Anluan's decapitated head and throws it across the table at Ket. Ket knows when he's beaten. He gets up and concedes his seat to Conall, who takes up the knife to carve the pig. "Anyone else want to contest this?" he says. And funnily enough, no one feels like arguing with the guy who just threw a decapitated head across the table. Wonder why. Still, the Ullad make a protective shield around him in case anyone tries to shoot him, and Conall starts carving the pig. Well, Conall may have claimed the champion's portion, but he is not humble about how much of it he takes. He eats the entire belly of the pig by himself, even though that would be at least to feed at least 9 people. Personally, I think if the pig is as big as they told us earlier, it would be able to feed a lot more than 9 people, but that is what it says. And the only part that he gives to the Connachta is the 2 front legs of the pig, which they are not happy about. The result is, predictably, a full-scale fight breaking out between the 2 groups, and the Connachta and the Ullad proceed to beat the living daylights out of each other until there's a pile of corpses as high as the walls of the house and rivers of blood flowing through its doors. Fergus pulls up an entire tree by its roots. I'm not really sure why, but he does. And all the fighting spills out of the house and into the courtyard, destroying everything. Mac Da Thó, who has been watching all of this unfold, feels like now is a good time to loose his dog to see which side of the fight it's going to join. The hound, Alva, chooses the Ullad and slaughters the Connachta, chasing them out of the place. It grabs the shaft of Medb and Alal's chariot, so Ferloga, their charioteer, strikes the hound and beheads it, leaving its head on the shaft of the chariot. So the Connachta flee, careering wildly across the country as they go, pursued by the Ullad. But Ferloga jumps out of the chariot somewhere around Meath and leaps instead into Conchovar's chariot, grabbing Conchovar's head from behind and basically threatening his life. Conchovar offers him whatever he wants if he'll spare him. "Oh, I don't want much," says Ferloga. I just want you to take me back with you to Evan Macher and have all of the single women of the Ullrich sing songs about me saying how hot they think I am. And that was done, because nobody dared disobey Conchobar when he decreed something like that. And after a year, Ferelóga went back home with 2 of Conchobar's horses wearing golden bridles. And that is the tale of Mac Da Thó's pig. You know something? It never tells us what happened to Conall after eating the vast majority of a super poisoned pig in one go. Now, he obviously didn't die, because Conall is the final girl of the Ulster cycle and he keeps showing up in everyone's death tales. So I imagine he just had a really awful few days on the toilet. R.I.P. the latrine diggers of Ulster. And while we're on the subject of Conall, the reason I flagged that he may or may not be related to Ket is that this story may be about Conall having killed one of his uncles, and if he is related to Ket, as far as we can see, he kills all of his uncles at various points during the Ulster cycle, and no one ever gets too mad about this, so that is a very weird approach to kinslaying. I have a friend who has done a lot of work on this particular topic. There's something weird going on with Ket, and Conall gets tangled up in it, so that's why I flagged that. So yeah, that was extremely violent. I hope you enjoyed it. You can probably see why some people think that it's a parody of the more heroic tales. The idea of the champion's portion is a very ancient one, but here it's so over the top and ultimately ends with this really bizarre moment with Ferelóga. And it's noticeable that Ferelóga, a charioteer, is the one to kill the hound that started all of this in the first place. Nothing really has normal stakes in this story or goes quite how you'd expect. I definitely understand the argument as a satirical parody of the Ulster cycle tales. I mean, it's a story about Ulster and Connacht going to war over an animal, it's just this time it's a hound and in the Tyne it's a bull. At the same time, there are aspects of the story that seem to predate at least the surviving versions of the Tyne, and this argument is by no means sewn up and certain. So yeah, I will leave you with that, and the hope that any feasts that you have this holiday season are less violent and do not involve any decapitated heads being thrown across tables. And if you have any requests for stories you'd like me to cover, I am always open to hearing them. If you have enjoyed this video and would like me to keep making them, please consider dropping a few quid in my tip jar so that I can afford to do so. Oh, and buy The Butterfly Assassin in English or in French. It also contains a lot of murder, although frankly not nearly as much as this story. And look how pretty the French edition is. You should totally buy it, even if you don't speak French. I don't speak French. Anywho, that is it. Merry Christmas, happy other holidays that you may be celebrating during this season. Don't kill each other. Have fun. Slán!